We're going to start with the most improved. Now, I I have a feeling you pick someone here, and I'm going to go outside of the box just a little bit here. And I'm going to say Mitch Morse. I'm only going to go outside of the box just a little bit. But remember last year when Mitch Morse was benched against the Cardinals after he had those, long concussions? The off season, you weren't really sure if he was going to stick around. They restructured him, but there was also talks that he was going to be a cap casualty. Again, the numerous amount of documented concussions was a big red flag, and I was like, oh, are they going to just tell him to go somewhere else, or maybe he should retire? But to this point, I really feel like Mitch Morse has played really consistent on that offensive line. He's communicating the most between all the other. He's the link in the chain, basically, with the other offensive linemen, and helps protect Josh Allen, calls out the blitzers, and we saw a huge improvement when he first came to Buffalo. And I'm not so sure that the Bills have the same level of success if Mitch Morse takes a step back. And like I said, to this point, he's been playing really, really, really good. And some of the stuff that he does is intangible, as I just mentioned, like the communication and the rapport with the offensive line. So for me, I'm going Mitch Morse. Really good football thus far through 6 games, and I'm really excited to see what he can do down the stretch.
I think Mitch Morse is a sneaky good answer there. Tip of the hat to you. I think he's kind of one of those polarizing players that a lot of people have negative things to say about him. I think he's been at least an above average center since he came to Buffalo. And when I'm looking at a player like that and I see how much struggles we've had with the guard play, I just kind of wonder, how much different it would look if you didn't have Mitch Morse calling out those protections and kind of being a safety valve on either side for them. I mean, I've seen plays this season where he kind of blocks off to the left and covers that gap, and then somebody's sneaking through the other gap, and he just pivots real quick and cleans that up. Mm-hmm. I think center is a very hard position to evaluate, especially when you're just kind of watching a casual game. But I do think he's having a good season. I think I know the guy that you thought I was going to say here. For me, it almost has to be Dawson Knox. Mm-hmm. But for the sake of changing up the conversation a little bit here, I don't want to give too many people multiple awards. So I gave my tip of the cap here to Devin Singletary and Zach Moss and kind of the run game as a whole. And to me, it's not to say that we have some run game that puts fear into other teams at this point. I don't think you're ever going to see us pivot to 25, 30 carries a game for 180 yards. But what I have seen from them this year is just kind of that little bit of a threat that's enough to keep the defense honest and have some production when they're called upon. And, it might be a 50, 60-yard game, but they're doing it on 10, 11, 12 carries. And that's kind of what this offense needs to complement the passing game. Just kind of enough from the running backs that, you can't drop everybody in coverage and anticipate a pass play every play. Just enough to make the linebackers hesitate a little bit and kind of work that underneath and middle of the field. So this award kind of felt strange for me to give because I don't think the running game, like I said, is going to scare anybody, make them game plan for it. But from where we were last year to this year, and just that little bit of a step forward and that little extra consistency to make teams at least respect the run game, I think through the course of the season will really benefit the offense.
Yeah, it's hard to argue against you, and I'm not going to repeat everything you said there, but this rushing offense has gotten significantly better, in my opinion, than last year. I felt like the only time that when the Bills would rush the ball is when we were trying to close out games, when it was super obvious. We're seeing a noticeable uptick in Brian Daboll's play calling to run the football. And sometimes when we probably shouldn't, but he still does, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. But one thing that I did notice about this group, and I heard this from the Shout podcast with Matt Perino and Ryan Talbot, and they had Jeremiah Searles on there. Actually, a really, really good episode. Definitely check that out if you haven't. But I think Jeremiah said specifically, this isn't a running back committee by choice. He's suggesting that the job has just been dangling. The RB1 job has just been dangling in front of them for a while, and the Bills are just asking which one of you two is going to take it. And at this point, none of them have taken it. So I think they do complement each other, and they have been playing much better this year as opposed to last year. But there's definitely still room for improvement with this group, and I'm waiting for one of the two to separate themselves from the other. So I'm eager to see what that looks like.
Yeah, I think they really want it to be Singletary too, but I think it might end up being Moss. I feel like he's not super flashy in the passing game and in the open field, but I feel like he's developing some reliability and some consistency in the pass blocking and the receiving game.
Yeah, definitely. It's too early to tell